Well, hello, this is Barry Odell with the Church of Christ at Mammoth Spring Facebook page. I normally go live every day at 11 o'clock Central, but for some reason this morning we were having a lot of connectivity issues, and I tried to go live twice, and both times it failed. So, went to lunch, went out and made a visit with the family, and we're back. Hopefully, things go better this afternoon. Hopefully. We'll see, but I see folks are joining on. Good to have each of you here today, and hopefully we can get this study conducted. Like I said, I tried it twice earlier, and things just didn't go my way. Hopefully they will now. All right, so we are working our way through a study of alleged Bible contradictions. Alleged Bible contradictions. And as I started this yesterday, I told you I got this idea from the American Atheist website. Yeah, Miss Connie, that was actually, that wasn't my living room. We were out making a visit with one of the members of the church here, and I was showing her how to get the live notifications. But hopefully she knows now. Anyway, it's been an interesting day. So I got this idea of dealing with alleged Bible contradictions from the American Atheist website. They have a resources tab. It's atheist.org. And they have a resource tab, and one of their resources is a list of supposed, or as I call them here, alleged Bible contradictions. So, alleged. Accused, but not proven or convicted. Thanks, Mark. The way it's going today, I need some good luck. Accused but not proven. Okay, that's what we're talking about when we use this term alleged. Bible, a collection of 66 ancient religious documents that claim to be inspired by God. And as I was saying in the video I tried to shoot earlier, I think this is a good working definition, even for those who are irreligious, because they would agree it's a collection of 66 ancient religious documents that claim to be inspired by God. That statement is true. Now, as a believer, as a Christian, I know that it is a collection of documents that are inspired of God. I don't just claim it. It claims it for itself, and there's plenty of evidence out there to prove the inspiration of Scripture. Contradiction, a combination of statements that are opposed to one another. So again, on this atheist.org website, here's one of their supposed biblical contradictions. The earth abides forever, Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 4. That's just part of that verse, but that's what they're using. And then they reference 2 Peter chapter 3, beginning in verse 10. So I'm going to go over there and read that again for the second time today. Seems like everything's holding up all right so far. 2 Peter 3, beginning in verse 10. So here's what the Bible says. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are therein will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening to the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. So again, from the a-religious, from the atheistic point of view, these two verses contradict one another. The earth abides forever. The heaven and earth will be destroyed. So here's where I want to go. Here's how I want to handle this. I want to deal with Ecclesiastes first. And this goes with any type of document, even down to any type of conversation. You can't just pull a very small snippet of a magazine or an article or a conversation and just say, okay, this is what you were talking about. That's what they're doing here with Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 4. The earth abides forever without any consideration of everything else that's going on in the text. So the book of Ecclesiastes is written by Solomon, the son of David. We know that from chapter 1 and verse 1. He's king in Jerusalem. And he has a point in writing, as every book of the Bible does. There is a purpose behind this document. 36 times in these 12 chapters, Solomon says, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. 9 times he says, now depending on whether you're looking at the King James, it says, vexation of spirit. The New King James says grasping for the wind. I prefer the way the New King James reads there. Seeking life the way Solomon was seeking it, trying to find happiness and fulfillment and completion in life, the way he was trying to do it was like grasping for the wind. It's not possible. And so his conclusion, and we'll get to that later in more detail, but his whole conclusion was you need to fear God and keep his commandments. So as we look then at Ecclesiastes and try to figure out what he meant in chapter 1 and verse 4, all of that's important to understand. Basically, what Ecclesiastes is dealing with, and so I'm going to pull this definition up here on my computer and look at it. A word that we could use is nihilism. Nihilism. That may not be a word that you use a lot, but it's an interesting word, and here's what it means. Nihilism is the philosophical view that all knowledge and values are baseless. That is, all knowledge lack a certain basis, and all values are subjective. Most commonly, nihilism is presented in the form of existential nihilism, in which life is believed to be without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. That's what we see in the book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, says the preacher. It's like grasping for the wind. So what is he talking about when he says that in chapter 1 and verse 2, and then again 35 other times throughout the book? Here's his point in saying the earth abides forever. He says, what profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. And so what he does, that's Ecclesiastes 1, verses 1 through 9. What he does for the rest of the book, really, well, the rest of the book, about halfway through chapter 11, is he shows his experimentation with this thought of everything that goes on under the sun. That's another very common phrase that we see throughout this book. There's nothing new under the sun. Again, Solomon tries everything in his pursuit for fulfillment, in his pursuit for happiness and completion in life. In fact, when you look at Ecclesiastes chapter 2, let's see. So listen to this, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. So this talks about his experiment, beginning in verse 9. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And that wisdom, now you go back to 1 Kings, chapter 3 or chapter 5, somewhere in there, where he prayed to God for wisdom, and God granted that to him, along with prestige and great wealth. So he excelled in everything he tried. You know, read the first 8 verses there of chapter 2, and he tells you what he excelled in. But then he says this in verse 10, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. That is nihilism. That is, there's not really any point in life except to live it. And in Solomon's case, to seek pleasure in that living. His conclusion, just for instance, I mentioned it, so let's look at it. Beginning in verse 1 here of chapter 2, in what ways does he seek pleasure? Well, he said with his heart, come now, I will test you with mirth. That is, the idea there is pleasure. So enjoy pleasure. Well, that's vanity, he says. That's his conclusion of his seeking pleasure. It's a waste of time. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh. Listen to that. I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh. How does he do that? With wine, with wisdom. You go down to verse 4. He's a workaholic, building houses, not only his own house, but God's house, even the temple. Building houses for his wives. Vineyards, gardens, orchards, fruit trees, swimming pools, verse 6. I know it says water pools, but swimming pools, groves of trees, male and female servants. Verse 8, silver and gold, special treasures of kings and of the provinces, male and female singers. I mean, anything you could imagine that people think will bring pleasure in life. Fulfillment, what humanity often refers to or thinks would be happiness. He said, listen, I've done it. I've tried it all. And that's what he says there in verse 10. I didn't withhold any of this from my heart. What he's dealing with here in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4, so looking at our screen here, the earth abides forever. What he's talking about is he said, I have lived my life and I've done everything under the sun. And pretty soon I'm going to be dead and the guy that follows me is going to get all my stuff. That's the concept of him saying the earth abides forever. He's not making an argument here about there's not ever going to be a judgment day. The earth's not going to be judged, as we know, and we'll deal with in 2 Peter chapter 3 here in just a minute, with fire. That's not his objective in Ecclesiastes. He's talking about his experience in life. So, yeah, Mark here says, not sure how wise it is to have 700 wives. Well, you can have wisdom and not be very smart. I think that makes sense. 700 wives and 300 concubines. And see, that's the thing. So you'll go back to 1 Kings chapter 11, for instance, when it talks about that. Solomon loved many foreign women. And as you keep reading that text, it says they led him away from God. His constant desire to seek pleasure and fulfillment led his heart away from God, whether it was through women or gold and silver or anything we looked here at chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. So here's another comment. Connie says, generations come and go, but since he did not know of the coming of the day of judgment, to him the world would go on existing. The New Testament tells us of the coming judgment. Absolutely. And it's interesting when you look at the Old Testament, there's not a lot of detail. There's not a lot of detail about judgment. There's not a lot of detail about the afterlife. We have statements like in 2 Samuel chapter 12, I think it's verse 23, after David's infant son died that was born by Bathsheba, he says, he cannot return to me, but I can go to him. But, other than some kind of vague statements like that, the Old Testament does not deal extensively at all with what we refer to as the afterlife. Now, the New Testament gives us a great bit more information. So, just saying all this is what he's dealing with in Ecclesiastes. Everything he's tried in life, he's going to go to the grave, and he actually points that out in Ecclesiastes. As happens to the rich, so happens to the poor. We're all going to die. Really, Ecclesiastes is it's a pretty dark and cynical piece of literature, because that's the perspective. Just strictly from this side of eternity, everything we've tried. I've tried everything, and it's all vanity of vanities, and it's like grasping hold of the wind. It's not going to happen. Hey, Mom. Hope you're doing well. I didn't say hi, Mom, yesterday, and I got in trouble to my live viewers. My mom got on to me on my live stream that I didn't say hi. So, hello, Mom. All right, so now here's another way. The word forever, okay, so Ecclesiastes 1:4, the earth abides forever. That word, a lot of times we think it means forever, for eternity. Well, contextually, you have to consider that. So here's an example. And I wrote this down on my in the margin of my Bible here by Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4. So listen to Exodus chapter 1 and verse 6. It says, is it verse 6? Yeah. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or to the doorpost. And his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Well, obviously, he's not going to serve him for an eternal and everlasting period of time. He's going to serve him forever so long as he lives. And that's what Ecclesiastes is dealing with. Seeking pleasure or seeking happiness and pleasure, seeking fulfillment in life from things and people, that's going to last forever in the sense some people try that as long as they live. And guess what? It's vanity. It's a waste of time. And again, so that's his conclusion. Obviously, when you get to the end of the book of Ecclesiastes when you get to chapter 12. And actually, I really love, so typically when we start talking about serving God in youth, we start in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 1. It really starts in chapter 11 and verse 9. Listen to this. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know, okay, so enjoy life. Go out and enjoy life. But listen, but know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. It's going to go away. You're not going to be young forever. And then you get into chapter 12. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth. And he explains why. Because your body's decaying. You're dying. Every one of us, not one of us is getting younger. Every day we get older. And that's the point here of Ecclesiastes. Okay, so David says, also I think it says about Jonah, he was in the belly of the great fish forever. But forever for him was 3 days and 3 nights. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that exact reference, but it's somewhere in the book of Jonah. It's only 4 chapters. It won't take you long to read it. So that's what we're dealing with in Ecclesiastes. It's not saying that the earth will literally always remain for all eternity. He's talking about his experience under the sun. So let's go then to 2 Peter chapter 3 and deal with this passage. I actually did a question and answer Sunday night here at Mammoth Spring, and this was a question that was presented to me about the end times. But so we talked about the language here in 2 Peter chapter 3, beginning in verse 10. Okay, so the day of the Lord is going to come as a thief in the night. So number one, the Lord is coming back. Number two, it's going to be as a thief. You don't know when a thief's coming. It's going to be unexpected. And Jesus says that as well, Matthew 24:36. Matthew 24:36. All right, so it's coming as a thief in the night. The heavens will pass away. Okay, that word means to vanish, to disappear, to go along by the side. It's going to be done away with. The heavens. But here's the thing. The same thing, whatever happens to the heavens is also going to happen to the earth. So listen to this language. Pass away with a great noise. The elements will melt with fervent heat. The earth and the works that are therein will be burned up. Verse 11, they'll be dissolved. Verse 12, the heavens will be dissolved because they're on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Again, Ecclesiastes is not dealing with end time events. 2 Peter chapter 3 is. So you have two different contexts, two different things being discussed completely. So an honest observation of these two passages shows there is no contradiction. But I want to look at some of these words here, because there are those who believe that the earth is going to abide forever. In churches of Christ right now, there's a lot of people who are teaching what's called realized eschatology. And what that means is, what they teach is that Jesus came back in AD 70 and he's not coming back again. In fact, I heard one of them the other day say, he quoted Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 4, saying there's not going to be a judgment day in the future because the earth abides forever. That's not what Solomon was talking about. That's a classic example of taking a passage out of context to make a point that you believe. So again, listen to the words here. So he says that the heavens will pass away. Verse 10, 2 Peter 3:10. Jesus says that same thing in Matthew 24 and verse 35. Heaven and earth shall pass away. What does that mean? Well, it means they're going to pass away. Let's see. They're going to melt. And so the word melt is interesting here. We English-speaking people, we know what we think of when we hear the word melt. I mean, you can picture it in your mind, something melting, okay? The root word for melt in the Greek language is luo. We would spell that L-U-O. And it means to be let loose, to be destroyed. And it's spoken of here in 2 Peter 3 and verse 12 in the future tense. Verse 10. In the future tense, the elements will be let loose in the future with fervent heat. So that's why it's translated melt. We have fire involved here. the earth and the works that are therein are going to be set on fire. They're going to be burned up. They're going to be dissolved, melted. So another word here, burned up. As it says at the end of verse 10, it will be burned up. Now, if you're using, there are some versions who, if I'm not mistaken, the English Standard Version, the ESV says will be either exposed or laid bare, depending on, again, which version you're using. So, if that's the case, what is it going to be exposed to? It's going to be exposed to fire. It's going to be exposed to God's judgment. That's what Peter's discussing here. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 10. The day of the Lord that is coming as a thief in the night. It's going to be laid bare with fire. It's going to be exposed to the judgment of God. It's going to be burned up. That's what he's talking about. Then you go to verse 11. It says dissolved. And again, that word dissolved is taken from the same Greek word that's translated melt in verse 10. Luo. It is going to be let loose. It's going to be destroyed. It's going to be wiped out. Peter's talking about end time events here and the final judgment. And then also verse 12, it says, being dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. That word melt is teketai, and it means to dissolve with extreme heat. This earth is going to come to an end one day. That's what Peter's saying here. And Peter's not the only one who says this. Paul, for instance, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, I think it's verse 24, talks about the end coming. There is an end coming to this existence, to this heavens and earth. There's a new heavens and new earth coming. It's not going to be this one. The first heavens and the first earth passed away. John talks about that in Revelation chapter 21. And I think John's talking about something different than Peter's talking about. John's talking about the context of persecution and the church enduring through persecution there, all throughout the book of Revelation. Peter's talking about the return of the Lord at the end of time. Two different subjects being addressed here. There is no contradiction between Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4 that says the earth abides forever, and 2 Peter 3, 10 through 12 that says the earth is going to be melted, dissolved, destroyed, burned up, however you want to say it. Peter uses several different things here. Okay, so here's a comment. I haven't looked at these in a minute. There is one that says the world will end on the 23rd of this month. The woman who had her son and her daughter killed that had been in this. Okay, I've not heard of that. But the fact of the matter is, people have been predicting the end of time for a long time. And guess what? We're still here. And that's why Jesus tells us there in Matthew 24:36, Mark 13:32, we don't know. Again, he's coming as a thief in the night. In fact, he gets so specific there in Mark's record. He says, the Son of Man doesn't know, the angels don't know, only the Father knows. That's it. There are those who believe the new heavens and new earth means a literal new earth. Yes. Now, here's the thing. New heavens and new earth, that phraseology is 4 times in the Bible, twice in Isaiah, once in 2 Peter, and once in Revelation. And it is talking about a new realm of existence. So in Isaiah 65 and 66, it's talking about the church. It's a prophecy looking forward to the coming age where the Gentiles and all nations of the earth would be brought in. Those are prophecies of the church. So look at 2 Peter, since we're here. Peter's talking about the judgment day, the final day, destruction and all this. So he says, or he asks the Christians, therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, again, we've already looked at that word, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? In other words, since you're not going to be here forever, how should you be living right now? That's the subject at hand, because there is a new heaven and a new earth in which righteousness dwells coming. So Mark says we have been in the end times since the time our Lord has risen. That's exactly right. And even the Old Testament prophets speak to that. The establishment of the kingdom of God, for example, Isaiah chapter 2 talks about it shall come to pass in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. We are in the last days, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. It very well could. But that's why we're also told the day of the Lord's coming is a thief in the night. Okay, so got a little bit off topic there. Here's the point. There's no contradiction between Ecclesiastes 1:4, 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 10 through 12. Two different topics at the point of discussion. Again, Solomon in Ecclesiastes talking about his experiments in life for happiness and fulfillment, and it's a waste of time, and it's like grabbing the wind. I'm here, I'm going to die, and somebody else is going to get my stuff. In that sense, the earth abides forever. Peter tells us, though, there's a day coming when it's all going to be set on fire and melted. And then, and see, that's another thing, the way Jesus teaches us. Matthew 25, verses 41 and 46. There's a place of eternal punishment, and there's a place of eternal reward. That's it. Heaven or hell. You got two choices in eternity. People don't understand that we are in the last days. Yeah, you're right, Connie. And I think because a lot of that, I think, is because people are looking for signs, as we well know. People are looking for, wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and pestilence and all this kind of stuff. The fact of the matter is that stuff happens every day we're alive. And it's been happening for as long as the earth's been standing, you might say, after sin entered the world. No contradiction here. All right, so let me do something real quick. I plan on coming back tomorrow live, and let me pull up this website here. Okay, so tomorrow, the alleged contradiction that we will deal with is seeing God. So here's their supposed contradiction. Genesis 32:30, this is where Jacob says, I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And John 1:18, no man hath seen God at any time. So that's another alleged contradiction. Lord willing, I'll be able to do that tomorrow with no connectivity issues. We'll see. This one went fine this afternoon, so I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate all of you being on here today. I always appreciate your comments. If anything strikes you later, you can still add to the comment section here. You can send me a question. I'm going to upload all this to YouTube, and you can send people over there. If they don't do Facebook, they can go to our YouTube channel. It's simply called Mammoth Spring Church of Christ. So thanks for being here again today, and I plan on seeing you tomorrow.